Good evening, and welcome to the Ferris State University Information Security and Intelligence Distinguished Speaker Series. I'm Don Green, the Dean of the College of Professional and Technological Studies at Ferris State University. The Ferris ISI Distinguished Speaker Series plans to regularly host senior-level professionals in the area of information security, intelligence, homeland security, and law enforcement. We wish to address student and local residents on cutting-edge issues, as well as information on career opportunities in government and the private sector. We are honored to have as our first speaker for the series, Thomas Betro. He's the Director of the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. As Director of NCIS, Mr. Betro is the senior official responsible for criminal, counterintelligence, and counterterrorism investigations and related operations within the Department of Navy. He also manages protective service operations for the naval leadership, has responsibility for information and personnel security policy within the department, and operates the Department of Navy's Central Adjudication Facility. He leads an agency comprised of some 2,800 civilian and military personnel with a presence in 41 countries and over 160 locations worldwide. In carrying out these wide-ranging duties, Mr. Betro executes an annual operating budget of approximately $460 million. As NCIS Director, he reports directly to the Secretary of Navy. Mr. Betro joined NCIS in 1982 and has served in a variety of organizational assignments and mission areas, both within the United States and overseas. He served 2 separate tours as an NCIS Special Agent Afloat during deployments of the USS John F. Kennedy and USS Enterprise. In April 2001, Mr. Betro was selected to serve as a deputy to the National Counterintelligence Executive. He later was appointed to the position of National Counterintelligence Executive by the National Counterintelligence Executive Board of Directors on behalf of the President of the United States. Mr. Betro was promoted to the Senior Executive Service in March 2002. Upon returning to NCIS in January 2003, Mr. Betro served as Assistant Director of Counterintelligence until August 2003, when he was promoted to Deputy Director of Operations. Mr. Betro holds a Master of Arts degree from the Naval War College and a Bachelor of Arts degree in Government from Colby College, Waterville, Maine. Accompanying Director Betro this evening are 4 NCIS Special Agents. Rodney Bush, Deputy Assistant Director. Special Agent Bush heads up the NCIS Cyber Department. Stand up, say hello. John Freeman, Executive Assistant to the Director. Michael Wygant, Special Assistant to the Director. And Joseph Raphael, an NCIS recruiter. Please join me in welcoming Director Betro and his team to Ferris State University.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Good evening. It's quite an honor to be here tonight to join you at what I'm told is America's fastest growing public university. I appreciate the invitation to come join you and be your inaugural, I guess, speaker. I don't know if there's a lot of pressure on me or not, that if I set the bar low, that means you all look forward to all the future speakers. If by some odd chance I set it high, then you'll be going downwards when the next speakers come. I'm sure that all your speakers will be good. What I'd like to do tonight is talk to you a little bit about a couple of areas, cybercrime and cybersecurity, and also talk a little bit about my organization, NCIS, and kind of what we do for the Department of the Navy. I think if I do that, it'll give you a sense of how important those areas are, cybercrime and cybersecurity, to our profession and our organization. Now, but I think this is a good time for me to do a little poll of the audience to kind of understand what our cyber IQ is here tonight. Okay, so a couple of terms. I want to see your hands if you know what these terms mean. How about spam? Okay, how about phishing? Okay, how about denial of service attack? Still a lot of hands going. How about malware? Okay. Okay, we got a pretty smart audience here tonight when it comes to the cyber arena. I would say that I'm assuming that because we have all this knowledge that there's a fair amount, I'll presume there's a fair amount of interest in the topics that we're going to discuss tonight, cyber crime and cybersecurity. The good news for us all is that we're not the only ones in this room that have a significant amount of interest in those topics. Even as we speak, the Congress and the White House are also deliberating over some future directions for a cyber strategy for this country. Next few minutes I'm going to offer you, I hope, some insights into what's going on at Washington, what they're thinking about in terms of maybe some changes in policies and law regarding cybersecurity and use of the internet in this country. And then what I'd like to do at the end, I hope, is open it up for question and answer. So I'll go through some kind of prepared remarks, and I really look forward to the end where I'd love to answer questions on anything to do with my organization, what we do, or the topics at hand. Again, since there's so many cyber-savvy folks, I should start with the disclaimer here that I have a couple times in other audiences today, that cyber is just kind of one piece of what our organization does. We have a pretty broad mission area. I'm going to delve into a little bit of that in a few minutes, and you heard some of that I think in my introduction. So it's hard for me to kind of become an expert in every single area, right, of the organization. Okay, so I'm not really a cyber expert, so I won't be asking any of those technical questions. I won't be answering any of those technical questions later, but I was smart enough to bring the expert that was introduced earlier here, so he is ready. But I do think I know a little bit about the significance of what that issue means to our country right now, and I'm going to try to delve into that in just a second. I'd like to first start with a little bit about my organization, NCIS. You've heard some of the facts here read in my introduction, but we basically are the primary law enforcement and counterintelligence organization for the Department of the Navy, which of course includes the Marine Corps. We work very, very closely with local, state, and other foreign country law enforcement and security services to accomplish our mission. Some people might hear 2,500 and think or 2,800 and that's a lot of people, but when you work around the globe, as was mentioned, in 41 different countries, 160 locations, aboard ships, and literally everywhere the Navy and Marine Corps are, including Iraq and Afghanistan, that's not a lot of people. It's really not a lot of people. And then when you talk about the cyber world, it really seems like a tiny number of people. So we do rely on their help. And what we do is we investigate the most serious crimes impacting on the Department of the Navy, our people, our facilities, and now, of course, our networks. Crimes that you can all imagine: felony crimes, murder, rape, terrorist acts, espionage, procurement fraud, anything you can think of that falls in the realm of felony crime, we investigate. But we don't just investigate crime and can do counterintelligence. In fact, today, no ship can pull into a port anywhere in the world unless they've had an NCIS on-the-ground threat assessment and vulnerability assessment. We do a lot of things that you've heard other counterpart agencies do. We do protective service operations for dignitaries, and we do customs and immigrations violations, firearms and explosive violations, and we chase fugitives. So you can see we have a pretty broad mission set and a large area to cover. In our organization, about 2,800, but 90% of those are civilians. Okay, there's only roughly about 200 to 300 active duty military personnel. The main kind of investigative operational arm is our Special Agent Corps, which represents about half of that number. And that's 98% civilians. Now that's unique in the Department of Defense amongst the military criminal investigative organizations. They're principally military personnel. And what that does for us is gives us a little wider level of jurisdiction, because we have civilian arrest authority. We can operate a little bit more comfortably out in civilian communities in the U.S. and overseas, but principally that in the U.S. Because there's laws involving called posse comitatus that limit the activities of military personnel in civilian communities. So I think that gives us an advantage as an organization. You heard that we're in a lot of locations, and then in today's technology-infused world, the ability of law enforcement agencies like ours to be able to successfully prevent terrorism and protect sensitive information and investigate crime is dependent not only on having a comprehensive knowledge and understanding of digital media and the cyber domain, but also a uniquely skilled workforce, which is something that should be of interest to this audience. Literally, there is no investigation or operation we conduct in any of our principal areas, our mission areas, that doesn't involve digital media or cyberspace. None. So there's pretty good job security if you have skills that operate in those areas. You all heard a lot about DNA and fingerprints and the significant role they play in solving crimes. And while biometric evidence will always play a significant role in solving crimes, the volumes of evidence and intelligence that is gleaned from digital media and cyberspace is mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. Our problem isn't harvesting that, it's making sense of it, because there's just so much of that information out there. Think about your own use of computers, cell phones, iPods, digital cameras. And those of you who are studying a little bit in the forensic world, and those of you who aren't, think about what a forensic expert could tell about you if they were to examine those items. They know who you talk to a lot. They know who you talk to just a little. They know all the websites that you would search. They know what you're planning to do in the coming weeks and maybe months. They probably know what you did over the past weeks and the past months. And there's a lot more, as you all probably know, we can harvest from those items. This, as you can imagine, this information is of great value to people in my profession. And during the course of our investigations, we're continually looking and finding new types of media that people come up with that we can exploit to the benefit of our efforts. Like biometric data, that information can prove who committed crimes. And likewise, it can oftentimes exonerate people who are innocent of committing crimes, which is just as important. Now, while there are some constructive uses of the data that's available to us today during the cyber era, there is, of course, a dark side of the cyber era. In this globally interconnected world, we as individuals and we as a nation are exponentially more vulnerable. You think about a person who commits a burglary today and breaks into a house and steals property. And, you know, depending on the nature of the property, they might walk away with hundreds or thousands of dollars. But think about a cyber burglar who could break into a computer system or just use his legal access. The amount of damage they can do in terms of financial damage and others is in the millions. Millions. The everyday use and reliance upon cyberspace touches each of us, whether you use a computer or not. Banking, research and development, business deals, everyday communications, and of course, as all of this audience probably knows, Facebook, contain information about us, our families, about businesses, finances, etc., and it all resides in cyberspace. And while cyberspace capabilities greatly enhance our lives and, as I mentioned, facilitate our jobs as investigators by putting so much information at our fingertips, they also present those with malicious intent opportunities to negatively impact our personal and professional endeavors. Today, practically everything that happens in the real world is mirrored on the internet. Okay, and I always use the example of espionage, which is kind of important for us. Kind of in the old days, the good old days, spies used to have to load up boxes of paper and material and find a way to sneak it out of the office without anyone looking, and then find a way to surreptitiously meet with a foreign agent somewhere and mark the trees and dead drops, and it was really, really time-consuming and really, really gave us a chance to maybe catch them, okay? And now today, think about it, at their fingertips. No paper. In many cases, they may not even have to download something. They can just give someone remote access to their own accounts or others if they have someone's password. So you got to think, for us, traditionally, all the things that happen in the real world are now being carried out on the internet, in cyberspace. And our ability to track and monitor that, there are more prohibitions from doing that that we have to try to deal with. You know, serious hackers may play an elite role, but anyone who owns a personal computer and it has a connection to the internet not only has the ability to follow current events, but to shape them if they so choose. For cyber attackers, the maze-like architecture of the internet provides a high degree of anonymity. Attack methods can disguise whether an attacker is working for a private organization, another country, for some formal chain of command, or maybe just on their own. Knowing who is attacking is critical to understanding the attacker's motive, which is the key to guiding our response. Okay? We don't want to use the same response to a teenager who's having fun, okay, that we want to a foreign government who's having the same fun. So understanding who is on the other end and the motive is very important, but it's also very, very difficult to find out. The technical challenge of detecting and tracing cyber attacks is hard enough. But for law enforcement professionals, the situation is even more difficult because internet boundaries don't look anything like state boundaries or local boundaries or even national boundaries. Cybercrime investigators are quickly forced outside of not only their geographic jurisdictions, but also their political, linguistic, and cultural comfort zones as well. As with terrorism and weapons of mass destruction, the dynamic, asymmetric, and still evolving nature of cyber attacks makes all aspects of cyber defense, including detection, analysis, investigation, prosecution, and retaliation, and makes them critical for our national security planners to study and understand how to deal with those. Just as the internet is in many ways still in its infancy, cyber defense strategies are also growing and changing quickly and are still evolving. For example, several European countries are now considering a total ban on hacker tools. But does anyone want to guess on the success they might have on banning the dissemination of free and ever-changing software? I'm sure that not going to have a high degree of success. Let me give you another example of how cyber attackers are forcing governments to look beyond their own borders for help. On April 26, 2007, the Estonian government moved a Soviet war memorial outside of its capital of Tallinn. Now this inflamed public sentiment in Russia and also amongst the Russian minority population in Estonia. Now, beginning on April 27th, the Estonian government, law enforcement, banking, and media and internet infrastructures began receiving or came under a continuous cyber attack lasting 3 weeks. Now, I'm sure that was a coincidence the day after that they enraged in public opinion. But because the Estonians conduct nearly 100% of their banking online, these denial of service attacks severed all communications to the country's two largest banks for up to 2 hours. Now that may not sound like a lot, but if you think about the major banks in our country not being able to communicate for 2 hours, that will cause panic. And it rendered their international services partially unavailable for days. The impact of the cyber attack generated tremendous interest, and it continues today from governments all around the world, not just Estonia. Less widely discussed, but likely of greater consequence, both to national security planners and to the computer network defense personnel, were the attacks on the router infrastructure of the Estonian government's internet service providers, which actually disrupted government communications for a period of time. So banks not talking, certainly that's a problem. Governments shut down, okay, that's nearly a crisis. Diplomatic interest naturally was extremely high, due in no small part to the implications this particular attack had to what's called as Article 5, okay, in the NATO alliance. What this means is, back in the Cold War, people heard of NATO alliance, this mutual defense pact. There's an article that says attack on one member is an attack on all, and there will be a collective response. Okay, they never heard of cyber attacks when this article was written, and this caused a lot of consternation at this particular time. If it was proven that a foreign country may have enabled, supported, or even conducted this cyber attack, the debate was, did that constitute a violation of Article 5, and would there need to be a collective cyber response, potentially, or some other response against that country that perpetrated it? And they did not invoke Article 5. It's only been invoked once in history, and that was on 9/11. But they're still left, the debate continues on the role of, does a cyber attack constitute the type of warfare that was envisioned when that article was written? But it's not just the smaller, less wealthy, perhaps less developed nations that are vulnerable to or are subject of cyber attacks. Closer to home, you may have read in a recent Wall Street Journal article about the discovery of malicious software on computers that control our nation's power grid. And now this highlights a far, problem that's closer to home and much more widespread. Companies that control our nation's critical infrastructure, including the electric grid, run day-to-day operations in a networked environment that is especially susceptible to cyber attack. About 85%, as a matter of fact, of our critical infrastructure is in private hands. So I think there is a need for our government to figure out how we're going to interface with the private sector, with companies and the individuals who own and control and operate these systems to ensure that they're a level of security that we are comfortable with as a nation. Now, that's not to slight the efforts of our private sector to protect their networks. They put a lot of effort in doing that, into doing that, but because even our own government-owned networks, including those owned by the Department of Defense, are under continuous attack. In fact, the Pentagon spent over $100 million in just the last 6 months alone repairing damage from cyber attacks and other computer network events. In fact, the Pentagon has acknowledged that its vast network is scanned or probed by outsiders millions of times each day. Last year, a cyber attack forced the Defense Department to take as many as 1,500 computers offline. And last fall, the department completely banned the use of any external flash drives in a government computer. Now, that may not seem like a problem, but when you're trying to be on the road a lot and prepare speeches, it becomes a problem. Fortunately, we have a lot of smart people here who could figure that out for me. Now, so far my comments have focused a little bit more on cyber threats and vulnerabilities. So the real question is, what's being done about this? And the good news is, as I mentioned earlier, the issue has a lot of attention at the most senior levels of our government, including at the White House. In response to President Obama's direction, there was a 60-day review recently conducted of our national cyberspace preparedness. That review was concluded just under 2 weeks ago. And the report has been provided to the President. This review assessed the plans, the programs, and the activities underway throughout the government that address our communications and information infrastructure. The review considered how cybersecurity can complement or enhance information assurance, military operations, and telecommunications, and how public organizations can benefit from cyberspace without risking personal information or national security. The purpose of the review is to develop a strategic framework to ensure that our initiatives in this area are appropriately integrated so that we're all working together, and that also that they're appropriately resourced. And that we need to, the recommendations made by the report have been kept very close hold. So I'm going to mention a couple of things that I wouldn't publish them tomorrow, but it's speculation based on, I would call it, educated guess. But since no single agency is charged with IT security, and responsibilities for cyberspace are, as I said, spread all over the government, there is, I think, consensus and it's more than widespread speculation that the President will create a top White House cyber security or cyber policy official, kind of a cyber czar. It's also widely believed that the President will act on a Department of Defense recommendation and create a new military command to coordinate the defense of Pentagon computer networks and improve U.S. offensive capabilities in cyber warfare. And there's been lots of debates over how to do that, whether this should be a standalone, and those of you familiar with the defense structure, standalone combatant command, you've heard of central command and strategic command. So debate has been whether we create another whole command like that that's just called kind of the cyber command. Or should we make it a subordinate command under strategic command, which is kind of responsible for the strategic protection of the United States. A lot of the speculation is probably initially it will be that subordinate command, and then they'll kind of build out what a future, separate command would look like. There's a lot of details, logistics, and everything goes into building a whole new combatant command. So more than likely, they'll roll this activity under STRATCOM. My guess is you'll probably see the director of NSA assume that position initially. And then they're going to have a lot of debate about NSA and doing cybersecurity in the United States, and then they'll figure out who's more appropriate to do that. There's little doubt that, as I mentioned, the cybersecurity needs to be a shared private and public sector effort. So it will be very interesting to see what framework is put in place that ensures the appropriate relationships between the government and the private sector. There's going to be a lot of concern about government dictating certain requirements on the private sector. Yet, I think you all know in this business, we're only as strong as our weakest link. And so wherever wherever they connect, you want to make sure that there's a level of security in place that doesn't, in fact, just shatter the security of the whole system. So this will be another tricky area to sort out. But I think there's a commitment on part of this administration to figure it out. And we're all anxiously waiting to see what's approved by the President in terms of changes to laws, because I do believe there'll have to be some legal changes, policies, education, and more importantly for agencies like me, resources. Because a lot of things happen where they increase your roles and responsibilities, but sometimes it takes a while for the money to trickle along behind it. And you know, buying people that have your skills can be very expensive. So we will need the resources that we can hopefully, you know, fulfill our responsibilities. I think I'm going to stop prepared remarks right there, because I wanted to take as much time as possible to open up the floor. I'd be honored to field some questions from you all on any topic of interest to you regarding my line of work, my organization, or the topics at hand.
Excuse me, what I'd like to do is get the wireless mic here. And if you have a question, please raise your hand and I'll try to get the mic to you here. And if I can figure out how to work it, hold the button down until it turns green. Okay.
I can just run up to and bend over, and they can.
That would be good, sir. I could just try to carry you around, and then we pass you across the aisle.
I'm not even sure you really need it, but we'll see.
Give it a try. If you speak up loudly, and if you could please tell us your name, who you are, Ferris student, whatever, Grand Rapids student, local professional, that would be great. We don't need a long bio, but not as long as the
Hey, before I answer any questions, there's no members of the media here, are there? Okay, good.
So, questions? Okay, here in the back.
I'm Aaron Bragg, I'm a web developer sitting here at CC. I guess my biggest concern is we have laws for people to drive cars. At what point can the government start to put laws into place with software companies building this stuff? For example, you know, you give kind of car you drive, well, what about the responsibility you give the kind of computer you drive? For example, I want to design interfaces for like alternative energy databases
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So the power grid thing that you talked about is
Yeah.
important to me. What regulations can we do to make sure that these private sector people aren't cutting corners and compromising security that's going to affect us in the long run?
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of where we're going with this whole cyber preparedness initiative. Now, there are laws and regulations that govern for the government what interfaces. There's security measures and standards that exist. If you want to do business with the government, okay, you got to meet this particular standard, and it goes up from unclassified to classified. Those standards keep changing. But in the private sector, I'm not sure if there are actually regulated standards, or this is their livelihood. I mean, they obviously want to protect their networks. It's in their best economic interest to do so. So I don't want to suggest they don't try to do that. It's a question of, if they don't have a standard that they have to meet, can they stop where they are comfortable at the greatest reduction of cost? I don't know. And I don't, Rock, if you want to comment.
The government's starting to look at supply chain risk assessment. So if you're a company that develops software that's going to be utilized in a government system, government might come out and look at exactly what the director said. How is the company's history with their products? What's their vulnerability rate? How has their products gone out? Do they have a history of creating vulnerabilities in their systems that might put government systems at risk? So that might all work into like the security risk assessment of software and hardware that the government starts to look at and say, hey, this is the type of company that we probably want to do business with. They got a great history, good products, solid security practices, solid coding practices. So those are things we anticipate are going to be more ramped up in the future.
I mean, I think that's the heart of what I was trying to get at. There's going to have to be some changes in the government-public, private sector relationship. And you hit right at the heart of it. Like I said, we've looked at the government and we've done some things, but it's been kind of hands-off from the private sector.
Let me interrupt. They're taping this, and so if you need to talk other than the director, I need to give you the mic so they can record it. So you could just speak into the wireless.
Jerry DeMag, longtime local professional, semi-retired. First of all, who asked that last question? I'll talk to you afterwards. I'm a
See, we're here
I'm
for you.
I'm a part-time consultant in the energy industry, and FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, has delegated some standards to another organization called NERC, which is a National Energy Reliability Commission. And the electric power industry is making new standards that they're going to be audited against coming this next June. So there is additional focus on security, and I think imagine for chemical industry,
Yeah.
other Department of Energy type of resources, there will be their own regulations on an industry by industry basis. Okay, now I'd like to ask a question of my own.
Okay.
What has happened? What has changed since 9/11?
Wow. Not sure how much time we have. I think generally, I think some of the things that people, you heard about after 9/11 about, lack of information sharing across the government, particularly the national security communities, and then, kind of rice bowl, everyone trying to protect that caused gaps and seams in between what everyone was doing, and maybe the bad guys exploited those gaps and seams. That was probably true. I will say there have been tremendous strides made in that area between all the law enforcement and intelligence agencies. We're not where we need to be yet, okay? What happens is everyone's more willing to work together. They're more willing to, when you ask a question, they're more willing to share, to give you the answer back. But for me, real information sharing is when you don't have to ask someone a question. You can log on. I can send it into their database. I can get the answer I want out of their database because it has context for me, not them, and I can answer my needs. That's the direction we've gone, and we actually started our own project, and it's about 9 regions in the country now with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies to do just that. What we do is we go in and mirror the records. We create a kind of a front porch there that everybody can search everybody's live records, not just closed files. It's all legally shareable law enforcement data. It's not, private data. It's records that are all legally shareable. It's a law enforcement Google. Now, you may think, you got to be kidding, that didn't exist before? No, we didn't. Before 9/11, we emailed. And if you were lucky and knew somebody, you could call, and they might take the time to go search their records and give you an answer. Okay? But what we've tried to do is create a law enforcement Google. Now, we're trying to spread that nationwide, and we're trying to convince the intelligence community to do something similar. It's a little more difficult in the intelligence community because of the sensitivity sometimes of the sources, but we believe it can be done to a certain degree. So those things are ongoing. I think there's been a big change in the willingness and cooperation, willingness to share and the cooperation between agencies. Certainly, a lot of what I'll call physical protection measures have changed. There's standards now, pretty strict standards for government facilities and buildings and standoffs and barricades and those types of things. So a lot of that's gone on and changed. Certainly, laws have changed to make it easier for law enforcement and intelligence organizations to gather information differently, speed up the ability to do it. So a lot has changed in a lot of different areas, I think. But as everything else, it needs to continue to evolve in a positive manner.
Hi, Rhonda DeLong, Professor of Criminal Justice here at Ferris State, and been in law enforcement for 20 plus years. I'm kind of asking the question for my students, I guess, in terms of employment opportunities and what type of preparation they need to get involved in NCIS or any of those governmental investigative units like that.
Okay. Well, I think we talked. What was your degree in again today? Criminology. Oh, criminology. What was your degree in? Criminal justice. So I would say that if you're in a criminal justice, study, that's a good degree to get if you want to pursue a job in law enforcement. But we pride ourselves in the diversity of our agent corps and our workforce. Diversity in all regards, including education. We have people that have degrees that you could name it, any background there is. In fact, Mike here is an anthropologist, okay? But he did become a forensic anthropologist, right, or something. So, that's helpful. And so I would say, you got to get in this job. You got to get a 4-year degree. So, 4-year degree in an area of study that's related to what we do certainly is a good thing. But the skill sets, if you can combine that with a cyber skill, or you can combine that with a foreign area studies, language, cultural expertise, then you're really, really, really marketable. As you heard in our organization, we operate in 41 countries overseas. So we need to, I tell people our job is to build rapport with people, okay? Victims, witnesses, and suspects. So if you want to build rapport, if you can look like them and you can talk like them and you can see the world through their eyes, you're going to be much more successful in building rapport. So, you know, yes, criminal justice is a good, definitely a good area of study, but if you're looking for how do you kind of like separate yourself a little bit, those are what I would suggest, and I think that's pretty common through the national security, national, federal law enforcement arena as well today, those skills.
So 4 years going to be appropriate, you prefer a master's?
I would say the minimum requirement is 4 years. I will say that we're running at about, I don't know, like the last class was about 60, but about, I would say about 40% of our basic school students have a master's degree. I won't say that that's necessarily a requirement, but again, I'd throw that in there with language, area, culture, expertise. I'd throw that with the cyber, something that kind of helps you build, you know, and also work experience. I mean, if you know, be a police officer in the military, those things all help. But the skills that we're looking for principally are those first couple that I mentioned. Yeah.
My name is Larry O'Quinn. I work as a tutor upstairs in the ATC Computer Lab. I'm a network major. My question is identity theft. NCIS, what are they doing to combat and to protect the service personnel? Even though in the last year there's been quite a few businesses that have been attacked through identity theft.
Yeah. It's a big problem for us in the service for a variety of reasons. One, the services, you know, over the years, their identity was built on your social security numbers, your date and place. I mean, things that all the records, the historical records, okay, put data out there that's pretty interesting for those who want to commit identity theft. But there's changes in policy. They're doing away with that. They're going to more of a CAC card. You know, one card does everything on it, and take off the certain things that are, you know, unnecessary that make you more vulnerable. The second thing for us really is a huge education push. We just finished a 6-month crime reduction program, coincidentally, focused on we call it, you know, identity theft and personally identifiable information, and training people how do you reduce your profile. We talk about what they really know about what their profile looks like on the web, and tell them ways that they can check that and try to reduce that. And then, of course, you know, the next thing for us is we investigate it. We follow up and try to investigate it. But the people who do it are pretty good. And depending on the time in between when someone, you know, realizes that their identity's been stolen and the time we get a report, you know, the trail gets a little cold. But you want to add to that, Rock, in terms of the briefing program, the training program? That's really the best thing we can do. And I talk about people, do you know what you look like on the web? Have someone go have someone go check you out on the web and tell you what they found. Someone you trust.
Mike Oley, ISI student here in Grand Rapids. Proactive versus reactive. How dedicated is the Bureau as far as prevention?
In terms of our just cyber in the cyber arena.
Cyber in general, yeah.
Well, I'd like to think in certain areas we're very proactive. You know, there's areas like child pornography. We're very proactive. There's a lot of stuff going on by law enforcement on the web to lure folks into certain situations. So that's a place we're very proactive. Certainly in the, I'll call it the counterintelligence arena, which can't really talk about what those things are. We're very proactive on the web all around the world, and any place else you want to think with in the cyber arena. Yeah, one of our roles is to investigate intrusions into DON networks. Once an intrusion occurs, it's kind of too late. So we're very proactive in getting out and working with the systems administrators ahead of time telling them what we need them to do the minute they detect an intrusion, realizing we can't shut down their businesses, for prolonged periods of time, briefing them on how what we detect when we do intrusions. One of the biggest things we do is determine what the vulnerability was that led to that intrusion. And so we go out and educate people, and we disseminate that so people can put patches on networks and shore up any vulnerabilities. So I look at that as a proactive effort. And once an intrusion occurs, and all our focus is trying to attribute that intrusion to someone, of course, we're reacting at that point, and it's very difficult.
As our partnerships, when we work with the FBI and other agencies, as other agencies and as other corporations and companies identify threats that are hitting their networks, we take that threat information and we actually provide it back to the Department of Navy Computer Network Defense people. So that's a lot of proactive information sharing, like the director talked about. If we can patch those things before the threat starts getting over to the Department of Navy, that's our biggest proactive effort, to make sure we plug the hole before it gets hit.
Somebody else right there.
Hi, Jim Jones. I'm one of the faculty in the ISI program.
I've heard of you.
Oh. It was all good. That was somebody else. On the cyber side, on the threat side, is there a particular threat that stands above the others? For example, is it a foreign nation state with an organized attacking effort? Is it the hacker for hire that's selling his wares? Or is it the Navy personnel that does their work at home and has a compromise at home?
Well, I mean, I think I would have to say the biggest threat to national security would be a nation-state actor that's supporting, enabling, or conducting. But all those things occur. Everything you just mentioned occur, none of which are good for the networks. Each one of those contribute to the other's ability to do more damage. And so, you want to say, which one every day do you I worry about, saying if they decide to do something would be more damaging, would probably be that first one. But doesn't mean we can kind of close our eyes to the others. So they're all important.
Hi, Janine DeVries. I'm a ISI student here. It's sort of a follow-up to his question. When you do, I guess you were talking about the Estonian situation with NATO, and then the policies and procedures and things that are going to be coming out of the White House. Has there been any effort to take sort of those rules and laws to a global level? I mean, so for example, the Chinese do attempt to hack into the F-16 program. What ramifications do you have? Retaliation is kind of a harsh word, but what is it that you can go back and say to them? I mean, you go to the Chinese and say, please stop doing that. Does that work?
Well, see, this is an extremely complex and extremely sensitive issue, because if there is doctrine, there is law that might say that a cyber attack constitutes an act of war. So yeah, you have to determine when other hostile acts occur against us, there's a range of options that the United States has. And if they determine that's an act of war, it was intentionally, China, they did it wittingly, those are complicated issues. They might decide, what are our range of options? It might be, the usual, it could be some type of political démarche, okay? It could be some type of economic kind of sanctions. It could be an information warfare retaliation. But I mean, you got to look at it as though, no, I don't think the United States is going to treat those things very lightly. But on the other hand, you got to have a response that's, commensurate with whatever happened to us. So without knowing, the ramifications of one attack, it's hard to say what do you think the preferred option would be. I don't know. But these are the things that, I'm glad I don't have to make decisions on, but that they have to decide. That was the point on the NATO Article 5, because someone has to decide. And what is that level of response?
Louise McCloskey. I'm an ISI student out of Traverse City, and I'm always wanting to add to my skill set. And something I want to add is a language. Is there a particular language, Chinese, Russian, Arabic, that is more marketable.
I think
Over
you hit
another.
you hit three good ones there.
And I can't decide between the three.
Yeah.
So three's a little much. I really
Yeah,
don't
well,
want three.
and you pick three that I'd love to see how you studied any of those more than one. You know, you can probably see if you read the newspaper, and you obviously picked out three good ones. There's probably one more that if you read the newspapers, it would probably be helpful. You know, but we operate in you know, we still need Spanish speakers. You know, we are operating a lot right now for us in West Africa. So French, and we have some folks in France, but French becomes again a popular language. And guess what? You know, Hispanics are the fastest growing minority in this country, and you know, be a minority in about 15 years. So you know, we work in communities around this country. So all languages we look at, and in addition to needing those skills, we actually pay extra for people who have those languages too. So there's other incentives to pick one of those languages. Now you can imagine the more complex language, you get paid a little more. So if that helps you at all, and that's not uncommon throughout government, I think. Okay.
I'm Andy Cecil, an ISI student out of Big Rapids, VP of the ISIA Information Security Intelligence Alliance. We kind of want to work on some certifications and software proficiencies with the cybercrime in mind. I was just wondering, with your cybercrime guy, if you could tell me what kind of certifications you'd be looking for, like 3 good ones to maybe focus in on.
Before you start, Rocky, let me get you the mic.
I'm interested to see how he answers this one too.
As you know,
I was going to say Red Cross, but I don't know if that was.
I'm going to step back one too, sir. You know, as the Cyber Department Deputy Assistant Director, I'm always looking for those language speakers too. But I'm looking for languages like, and some of you computer folks will know, Perl, C++, Java. You know, I'm trying to educate my agency that these people that speak those languages speak the international language of cyberspace. So we can transition any border, we can communicate with anybody as long as we know those languages. As far as certifications, we're looking at people, the government's actually moving towards getting anybody that works on network systems, that includes my responders that go out there and respond to threats, the CISP certification, okay? Gives you that good general knowledge of secure networks, giving you, the encryption, the security, the information assurance. It's a good, well-rounded, well-respected certification in the cyberspace community. Additionally, as far as our job is concerned, NCIS doesn't own any networks. We don't manage any networks, so we're kind of the responders. So when we respond, we need people to get out there and be able to operate on a network alongside with the system administrators to collect evidence. So when you start talking about collecting evidence on a network, you might look at stuff like Cisco Certified Network Associates, Cisco Certified Network Professional with a security aspect. I'm pretty familiar with those. I actually, during my time at NIST, I left NIST for a while and went to work for Cisco Systems. Very, very good, and NCIS does not push any particular product, but learning about Juniper networks, learning about different network devices, being able to respond to a switch, a router, being able to make configurations to change how a switch port, you need to go and monitor a port to see if a threat's there. You want to mirror that port. It'd be nice to be able to talk to a system administrator. It becomes very important to be able to gain the confidence of the people that run those networks. Because if you walk in there and start saying things, because we all know the system administrator people kind of got an ego, right? You start mentioning the wrong things to a system administrator, you're not getting next to their network, right? So knowing that speak's going to help you. And then on the forensic side, when you start collecting those machines, you might look at the guidance software. You might look at FTK, forensic certifications. And I've already kind of learned it, here at Ferris, you guys are kind of learning some of this stuff already, which is great. And that, like the director said, that kind of starts setting you aside from other professionals that are getting into the workforce. So, does that answer your question?
Show off.
should we take a vote?
Well, we did have a new hand.
Oh, we did have
We
a
did.
hand. Okay, I'll give somebody else a shot.
But I'll be here anyway. If he gives me the hook, I'll still be here. You can ask me.
I'm Connell Hoga, network administration major at GRCC. And I guess what I was wondering is what kind of security do you guys put in place beyond what would be commercially available?
As I mentioned, there are I call them DISA, the Defense Information Systems Activity sets security standards for DoD systems. The security standards are different than commercial systems. So, without giving you the code or something, I'm not sure. A lot of things, like I mentioned about that law enforcement, it's called LINKS, Law Enforcement Information Exchange System. We didn't have to. We had a contract to build the system for us, and we kept the codes, but we used that level of security, which is a DISA standard, which is actually almost the same level as we use on our secret level networks, but we use it in that law enforcement system. Because we paid for it, we can do that. It would be costly for some other, everyone to keep doing that, but.
Hi, Cody DuPont, United States Navy. I was wondering that you said there's millions of attacks every day on government software.
Events. I said millions of scans,
Millions of
probes,
scans,
yeah.
probes. Do you know that if these are just everyday hackers, or are these nations trying to get to our software, our military intelligence, so on and so forth?
I'd say it's all of the above.
I'll take it outside of cyber. What's NCIS?
All right.
Hold on.
Back in my wheelhouse.
We want to capture you for posterity here, so.
Brian Tarani with private sector. Outside of cyber, what's NCIS's involvement in the pirate problem?
We're actually right in the center of the pirate problem. We actually this past year, from a couple years ago, got the first conviction of a pirate in like 50 years. Our guys are on the ships that you hear a lot about. Our job is when they capture pirates, then we go aboard the ships and we do the crime scenes and we interview and interrogate the pirates and their witnesses, and we build the case for prosecution that's presented in that foreign court. So some of the recent ones, we've done all that, and we process the pirates, the boat, I guess I'll call it a boat that they were on, and they got shot. We did all the processing, did the interviews of all the crew members on that ship, and are now preparing that case for prosecution. And so our guys are floating around on these task forces right now. Now we started doing this thinking this will be 2 weeks, it'll go away. But like a lot of people, I'm kind of amazed that it just keeps coming and doesn't look like there's any end in sight. And then what we do is not only do we interview them for evidence for prosecution, we glean intelligence that we can then share back to the rest of the U.S. government about, where did they come from, who do they know back there, what do they hear about other pirates and other things that might go on, and so we can pass that back for appropriate use as well. Okay.
Let's do one more, if there's one more, otherwise, okay, one more?
How extensive is the adjudication system for clearances? Is it different than the joint?
Well, the standards are the same across the kind of the national security arena. There's a kind of intelligence community directive set by now the big director of national intelligence. So the standards are the same across the government. And in fact, if you get I'll call it the highest level, top secret clearance in one place, there's reciprocity if you move to another organization. As you come down from, say, the top secret level to the secret level, the level of rigor in the process drops down. So the first one, that's when you hear about knocking on doors and checking on people and, going back to your college and talking to your fraternity brothers and sorority sisters and all that. The next level down, which for secret is called the National Agency Check. It's literally just a records check. No one goes out and does anything. Now there's a move afoot to do away with some of the rigor in that top level clearance and try to go to more of a totally automated system of doing background checks. So we're all waiting to see how that's going to work. It's kind of some some analysis that shows, you know, looking at all these clearance investigations in the past, what have been the things that have actually worked as a tripwire to see someone wasn't suitable? How do we then organize those in a methodology that minimizes the, you know, the cost it takes to send everybody out to neighborhoods? You know, if you went back and said we did, you know, 10,000 neighborhood inquiries and not a single one popped something bad about somebody, maybe it's not worth investing too much money to go there. Okay, that's the logic behind it. So we all react kind of the same way I saw you reacted when you first heard it. Say, what? But we'll wait and see what rolls out. But that's the theory behind it. But right now, that's still that the rigor is pretty high, and it takes, unfortunately, takes several months to get all that done with the number of clearances that are adjudicated in the government every year. Okay.
Don't keep pointing at me. I need the mic. Could you please all give Director Betro a hand?
Thank you. Thanks.